Is the best camera of 2022 a Sony, Canon, Fuji, OM Systems, or Panasonic camera? Do you own the best camera of 2022? Stay tuned, but first I encourage you to subscribe and choose all notifications so that way you can stay up to date on all the latest camera gear, news, and rumors. The whole premise for the best camera of 2022, while based on good intentions, is really silly and useless to us. I can analyze each camera's capabilities, compare the outcomes for stills and video, and develop a spreadsheet to identify the best camera for Micro Four Thirds, APS-C, full frame, or medium format, but even that is purely academic. The whole idea that I can present you the best camera of 2022 is just utterly arrogant. I'm here to inform you so that way you can make fact-based decisions. So I'm going to go ahead and present 10 notable cameras, looking at their innovative technologies and advancements. Then at the end of this video, I'll present your vote on the best camera for 2022. OM Systems OM1 is the first camera by Japanese industrial partners since the spin-off from Olympus, although it still has the Olympus branding on front and in a very prominent position. The OM1 was announced in February and began shipping in March for $21.99, but it can be had for $19.99 today using the link down below. The OM1 is sold as a powerful go anywhere, any environment camera that's good for wildlife, landscapes, and has some solid video capabilities. Notable capabilities include that backside illuminated stack sensor, improving not only performance but low light performance over previous models. It offers computational modes like focus stacking, live ND, and a high resolution 80 megapixel mode. Autofocus has been improved over previous Olympus cameras, with the biggest improvements coming in subject and object detection. Continuous shooting has been improved to 50 frames per second, but one must use their high-speed zoom lenses, otherwise you're going to get around 25 frames per second. Video tops out at 4K 60 frames per second, but unlike other cameras in this price range, it can not only do UHD, but also DCI. The OM1 is an excellent Micro Four Thirds camera. It has good video capabilities, excellent image quality, and has a small and lightweight form factor and good dynamic range, making it a solid camera for the best camera of 2022. And while the OM1 is definitely a better stills camera on the Micro Four Thirds platform, when it comes to video, I suggest taking a look at our next camera, the Panasonic GH6. Panasonic went on a 5-year voyage, a 5-year mission to come up with the GH6, announced in February, a week after the OM1. It was seen as a video-centric Micro Four Thirds camera with some rather impressive video capabilities regardless of the sensor and price point. The GH6 has a 25 megapixel sensor delivering 5.7K over sample 4K up to 60 frames per second, but can also support 5.8K over sample video up to 30 frames per second when shooting anamorphic. The GH6 is the first Micro Four Thirds camera to offer CF Express Type B card slots, which is needed to take advantage of the high detail Apple ProRes 422 and 422HQ internal recording. 4K 120 is supported over HDMI, and direct recording to SSD is also supported. The GH6 has excellent video quality, excellent video tools such as waveforms, vector scopes, and histograms that don't disappear after pressing the record button. But there is room for improvement. I'd like to see better dynamic range below 800 ISO, and of course that DFD contrast detect autofocus system is still unreliable and untrustworthy. But if you're shooting in manual mode, manual focus, well, it's a beast with no competition. And with an inventory clearing price of $1697, that's $300 less than the OM1 and $500 off its normal price, the GH6 deserves our attention as one of the best cameras in 2022. The Sony a7 IV, while announced at the end of 2021, didn't ship in earnest until 2022. It's a full-frame camera with access to a large inventory of E-mount lenses. It sells for $24.98 and has been the #1 selling mirrorless camera in 2022, often topping the sales charts for popular Japanese retailers like Yodobashi or Map Camera or Camera Fujiwara. The a7 IV has a 33 megapixel sensor, can shoot at 10 frames per second high-speed continuous, supports 4K video up to 60 frames per second, and that's 10-bit 422 with full sensor readout. It's got good dynamic range, excellent subject and object tracking, offering one of the best focusing systems on the market next to Canon. Equipped with dual UHS2 cards and good battery life, it competes against the Canon EOS R6 with both cameras costing $2,500. Although it stands above the Canon EOS R6 in many areas, but not when it comes to rolling shutter or high-speed continuous shooting, where the R6 performs better. It's hard not to appreciate or recommend the Sony a7 IV as being one of the best cameras in all categories for 2022, but there's another Sony camera that could take that crown. In October 2022, Sony announced a follow-up to the a7R4, the much-anticipated Sony a7 R5, a full-frame camera with impressive video and stills capabilities. Sony added a dedicated AI chip to the R5 to aid many capabilities, including a new AI-based autofocus system to set itself further apart from the competition. Like the R4, the R5 has a 61-megapixel backside illuminated sensor, but it's improved with better performance, delivering 10 frames per second continuous shooting, 8K video at 24 and 25 frames per second, but unlike the R5, the Sony R5 doesn't deliver 8K RAW, and it does have a 1.24 crop when shooting 8K video, and then of course there's that 30-minute record limit. The R5 can deliver oversampled 4K video up to 60 frames per second, but oddly missing is 120 frames per second. It can deliver 10-bit 422 video, has a full-size HDMI port, and has dual CF Express card slots. They're Type A, but they also double as SD card slots. While the R5 can shoot 240 megapixel stills with pixel shift, it's no longer a gimmick. Sony has found a way to deal with movement from plant life, animals, and humans entering the frame, reducing the risk of any unwanted artifacts. At $38.98, the Sony a7 R5 competes directly against the Canon EOS R5 at $39.99. It's hard to say one is better than the other as both take a different approach. High-resolution a7 R5 with 61 megapixels or unlimited 8K RAW recording at 30 frames per second. The Canon EOS R5 is 2.5 years old, but it's still considered a contender as one of the best cameras available in 2022. It has a 45 megapixel sensor, can shoot 20 frames per second continuous stills, and delivers an impressive 8K video RAW unlimited at 30 frames per second. And when I say unlimited, I mean without overheating. Firmware 1.6 delivers unlimited video recording at 8K shooting RAW at 30 frames per second, 8K oversample 4K, and 4K 60, but that 30-minute recording limit is still present, irritating customers. The 45 megapixel sensor isn't stacked, it's not BSI or backside illuminated, but it does have a rather limited rolling shutter even when shooting in 8K, so the R5 really isn't lacking any power. And it can deliver 4K up to 120 frames per second, although the footage does tend to be a little bit soft. If you need a professional-grade stills camera with excellent video capabilities, one can appreciate the Canon EOS R5, but it's definitely not cheap at $38.99, being the second most expensive camera that we're looking at in this video. And of course, that 30-minute record limit can be eliminated by purchasing the Ninja 5 or the Ninja 5 Plus, also giving us color waveforms and other exposure tools, as well as access to more video codecs. But it can easily add $1,000 to the price of the camera. Canon released the R7 and the R10 in 2022. They've sold very well across the planet. The R7 is the successor to the Canon 7D, a DSLR, and while the R10 is Canon's entry-level APS-C camera at $979, we do understand that Canon is planning to announce several new APS-C cameras priced under the R10 in the first quarter of 2023. The R7 has a 32.5 megapixel sensor. It can shoot 30 frames per second electronic, but the buffer will only let you shoot for about a second before filling, and then it's going to take some time to clear. It can shoot 7K oversample 4K at 60 frames per second, providing detailed video better than any other Canon APS-C camera, and it's also capable of shooting 10-bit video with Canon Log 3. The R7 has dual UHS-2 card slots, a 2.36 million dot electronic viewfinder, and a 1.62 million dot flippy screen. The R7 is Canon's first APS-C R system camera to feature IBIS, and while not perfect, at $14.99, many consider it to be a good blend of performance and capabilities. The Canon EOS R10, announced alongside the R7, is capable of 23 frames per second electronic, but it has the same limited buffer as the R7 and takes time to clear. But unlike previous Canon APS-C cameras, Canon has done away with that soft 1.6 times cropped video. The R10 provides 6K oversample 4K, and for those afraid of all the effort that goes into grading log footage, The R10 is a solid family camera, and while it's limited to a single card slot, don't let this put you off. While normally selling for $979, over the past week, this has gone on sale at B&H for $200 to $100 off, currently selling for $797. Canon refreshed the Canon R6 with the R6 Mark II in November 2022. It came with much anticipation, but what surprised many of us is that, well, Canon didn't raise the price of the R6 Mark II over the R6 Mark I. The Canon R6 Mark I is a solid stills camera. It's great for fashion and low-light venues with 20 frames per second continuous shooting, great dynamic range, and good low-light performance. The Mark II got a new sensor with a resolution boost to 24 megapixels, but the real big improvements come to video. The 30-minute limit is extended to 6 hours, and instead of 5.1K oversample 4K video, the Mark II can record 6K oversample 4K and can do so without overheating up to 30 frames per second. But if you need more, well, the R6 Mark II over HDMI can deliver 6K RAW Apple ProRes and up to 180 frames per second in 1080. The R6 is a solid stills camera, but the R6 Mark II unlocks much needed video capabilities handcuffed on the Mark I. Nikon announced the Z9 in October 2021, but didn't start shipping the camera until December the 23rd. The Nikon Z9 is Nikon's flagship mirrorless camera, showing that they're still capable of producing high-grade, top-shelf products, and at a price of $5,500, it not only shocks customers, but delights. But not everybody's drinking ambrosia and eating unicorn steaks. The Nikon Z9 availability, well, it's been constrained by the lack of supply since the camera started shipping late last year. Nikon continues to be facing challenges with the availability of parts and other components. But that aside, it's a brilliant camera with a 45.7 backside illuminated stack sensor. It can shoot 20 frames per second lossless RAW at 45 megapixels, which generates 1.2 gigabytes per second of data. Or you can shoot at 120 frames per second at 11 megapixels. And it has the best video capabilities to date of any stills hybrid camera, with 8K video RAW up to 60 frames per second, 4K up to 120 frames per second, and Apple ProRes in 4K, and of course that 30-minute record limit that's present in Canon cameras isn't present in the Z9, giving you unlimited video free from overheating and other arbitrary limits. If you add the cost of purchasing a Ninja 5 or a Ninja 5 Plus and all the recommended components, well, then these two cameras really aren't too far apart in price. Fuji made a couple of surprises in 2022, the first being the X-H2 and then the X-H2S. The X-H2 is an APS-C camera shooting, well, far above an APS-C camera in terms of performance and capabilities. The X-H2 has a 40 megapixel backside illuminated sensor, and it's capable of shooting 8K video at 24, 25, and 30 frames per second. It can also shoot 4K up to 60 frames per second and 1080 up to 240 frames per second. It can shoot 20 frames per second electronic or 15 frames per second mechanical, and sports a new 7-stop IBIS system, allowing you to shoot longer exposures and produce smoother, more cinematic video. Like Panasonic and Nikon, it supports Apple ProRes capture, but also captures Blackmagic RAW over HDMI. And it has a single CF Express Type B card slot, something we haven't seen on APS-C cameras before. The other card slot is a UHS 2 card slot. Priced at $1,999, this is the cheapest camera capable of recording 8K video and worth your consideration for the best camera in 2022. So what do you think is the best camera in 2022? I presented 10 cameras that I think are worth your consideration, but I have been, well, far from complete in recapping all the capabilities of these cameras, as I'm sure you'll point out in the comments section down below. I've also left out some other noteworthy cameras that are worth consideration, such as the Fujifilm X-H2S. Looking at the cameras that I had in this video, I created a poll on my community page. In first place, 46% of you, which almost equates to Canon's worldwide market share, said that the Canon EOS R5 is the best camera in 2022. And in second place, we have Nikon's flagship mirrorless camera, the Nikon Z9, which was announced last October and started shipping just before Christmas. In third place, we have a tie between the Sony a7 IV, announced last October and started shipping in December, and the Sony a7 R5, which was just announced in November and has already started shipping. In 5th place, we have another tie, this time between the OM Systems OM1 and the Panasonic Lumix GH6. And all alone in 7th place, we have the Fujifilm X-H2. If you're thinking of buying any of these cameras discussed today, please use my links down below as it helps support the channel, and many are still on sale today, like the Panasonic Lumix GH6 being $500 off. And if you want to stay up to date on the latest camera gear, news, and rumors on all the major brands and makes, punch that subscribe button and select all notifications so that when I publish a new video like this one here, you'll be notified by YouTube, saving you from having to scrub all the latest Twitter feeds, RSS feeds, websites, YouTube channels, print magazines, essentially saving all your valuable time having all the information here in one place. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.